Welcome. My latest read is Blood Brothers. It's written by Deanne Stillman, and it is the story of a strange friendship between Sitting Bull and Buffalo Bill of the Wild West show. This has a very good index in it, bibliography, notes, and the author visits all the places that she writes about in here. Although we often think about the Old West as being West, a good portion of this book takes place in the more central part of the country. Sitting Bull had turned himself in along with some of his people. He was well known, popular in Europe. People of means wanted to meet him. He did have, for the most part, freedom of movement. He had handlers, I think, in the Department of the Interior and among the Army. He did have a certain amount of freedom of movement and traveled quite a bit. But still, he had handlers. One of the interesting points is the fact that when he saw the Wild West show, he was impressed with Annie Oakley and her shooting skills, and he sent her a letter with some money so she would come and see him. She sent the money back with a note, and they set up a meeting. Buffalo Bill was a product of this country at that time. He lost his father at a young age, I think about 10. He was a good shot, a good rider, a good hunter, and actually he just kind of survived making money, going where the money was to be made. He rode for the Pony Express. He worked for the Army. I think he was a hunter and provided the food for them. Buffaloes come up in the book, and how, in a way, the buffaloes were just slaughtered by people, and why the herds got so small. And he came across, the right kind of people. There was somebody who was a writer looking for stories in the West and would eventually write a play, and Buffalo Bill from time to time would come in and star in that play. Well, during these kind of encounters with people, I'm sure he met people who could finance, and between a couple of others, the Wild West show was eventually invented. And yes, Sitting Bull was in the show for 4 months. There were travels. And when you think about it, it's really quite funny that you had this Wild West show and the cowboys and the Indians fighting it out when at the time they were being subjugated. It is unique in its American, way of telling a story and the outcome of what happened. The Indian Wars were going on after the Civil War, and for probably about 20-25 years. And what does Indian War mean? It means there were scuffles as the Army was rounding up these people. There's a lot of good information about other Indians of renown, also of Americans traveling in that part of the country. And for the most part, it kind of reminded me of the internet. People knew something was happening at that time, something big, and they were trying to cash in on it. In the same way, people are looking for a way to make money on the internet. It's a very good book. It makes a good reference book for the West and for many names that popped up in the West at that time. Nonfiction, I think, is difficult for people, but you don't have to read nonfiction page for page. Check it out, look through it, go through the index, and read what is of interest to you. This is one way you pick up a lot of little bits and pieces about history, and just you start being able to put together a picture of history in your own words. There's a few black and white photos in this. And I'd have to say, too, that Sitting Bull, he was born, I think, in 1839, I'm not sure. and he died around 1890, I think. So he didn't live to be quite 60 years old. And when you think about it, that wasn't a very good time to be an Indian in this country. But he was brave and he was smart. You can tell he was smart. Also, I live here in New Mexico. There are many Native Americans here, and it's the first time in my life I've ever really encountered Indians. And they are as diverse in personality as any nationality of group are. And they are smart, they have a good sense of humor. And when you go through a book like this and think about the Wild West show, it all starts making sense.